So, on tonight's energy update, we're going to be talking about pole shift. We're going to be talking about whales, not the country, but the animals. And are they the canary in the coal mine as regards to the magnetic field of the Earth? We're also going to be looking at other signs that may sort of signal that magnetic reversal, such as lightning that goes from the Earth to the sky. How does it affect you? How does it affect us collectively, individually? We'll be talking to Tanya Lawton also at the end of this video about that and talking about society and how things are maybe turning upside down. And we might be losing our moral compass, as it were. So we'll be going into that. We'll also be going into how the energies will be affecting you. So don't forget, stay here, click the bell and subscribe button to Cymatic TV. Hello and welcome to Cymatic TV. This is your midweek energy update, telling telltale signs of a pole shift. Let's see. Let's have a look. What's going on with the sun at the moment? Nothing really happening in particular. There's still those filaments that are happening across the surface of the sun, and they're those, you can see them up there on the right hand side, etc. And you can see them sort of snaking across. This is just a close-up video of how these sort of things are made. You can see these sort of sparks that are around it, where the sunspots are trying to get out, but they're not making it. And as they do gradually sort of push from below, this line gets darker, and these elements or these dust on the surface of the sun is gradually pushed into a plasma cord as it gradually feeds it, and that sort of creates those sort of cords that do erupt, and they do get ejected in the direction of the Earth. But as you can see here, sometimes it connects to that cord and then it sort of weakens it. So it's an ongoing battle actually between the seasons, as it were, a little bit like the clouds and the sun as we go through autumn and etc. Okay, so that's really what's been happening on the sun. There hasn't been a great deal of activity certainly coming our way, and we can see this on the magnetic field of the Earth. We can see there on the right hand side those yellow bars that came through. That was to do with a coronal hole that was facing Earth sort of 3 days ago. By the time that wind gets to us, it's sort of bunched up and hit the Earth on the Monday night and Tuesday morning, which created quite a lot of earthquakes, as we're going to be seeing in a minute. The other thing that's been interesting as well is that X-ray flux that we can see down below. Now, I was talking about white noise in previous videos, and that white noise has been trying to push through. And then bizarrely, what happened yesterday afternoon is that white noise started really kicking in, but it dropped out at the same time. So it might well be part of the magnetic sheet that's coming through from the sun, that comes through once every 2 weeks. But it was certainly very interesting and made a bit of a lull, really, and might have brought your vibration down a bit. And certainly earlier on in the week, I think it was Monday. Monday was a very slow day, as we can see up here on the bars on the right hand side, where there's been a lot of drop out of the magnetic field just before the coronal hole hit. So it would have made you feel a little bit down and out, a little bit sort of heavy, sort of kind of what's going on, never going to get through all of this sort of malarkey. It should have been short-lived. By the end of the afternoon on Monday afternoon, should have been picking up a bit and found a bit of inner peace and patience. Let's just have a quick look what's been going on with the chakras of the Earth and how they've been vibrating. So this is the Sunday, following off on the Sunday, and we did do that chakra sequence which I shared on the energy update last week, and we talked about how the heart was having difficulty of getting through, really, and we can see this in the earthquakes this week, so far this week since Sunday. There's been mainly stuff going on the third eye, the solar plexus and the heart, but also the crown and the root chakra. So it's sort of coming to an end of a sequence, really. There's more than one sequence going over this, but certainly the most interesting thing, and this has been going on now for the last sort of 10 days, the sacrum has been very absent. Which has been quite interesting. So it's coming much more into the collective, much more into that sort of Aquarius vibe, really. And as we go through the week, we can see on the right hand side, right by the heart chakra, it starts ringing off again, both sides. We've still got the solar plexus that is kicking on. The root and the crown is joining in the thing, but as again, the sacrum is no longer there. So that rhythm has completely changed to what it was before Christmas, when it was mainly solar plexus and sacrum. And now we're getting much more into explaining ideas, seeing ideas, and doing stuff. So it should be moving on to doing things rather than just sort of exploring them within our mind or in our spirits and stuff like that. This is today. We still see that heart sort of ringing out a little bit. There's a bit on the root and there's a little bit on the solar plexus. So it may be hard to explain what is on your heart sometimes, but it's better once it's out. It's better out than in. You know, if you start on the principle that it's nobody's fault and it's the situation that is the problem. If you start from that basis, then you're not blaming anyone and you're not blaming yourself. And usually it's a lot easier to speak about it and convey how you feel in the heart, you know, and moving on and doing things. So that should be quite good. I'm enjoying this. This came from the other day. Look at that smiley emoji that's happening on the northern polar vortex. Now, this is an interesting thing. This goes a little bit into pole shift as well, talking about that polar vortex being split in half, really, at the moment, where we've got two sort of vortices, one over Greenland and Canada, and one over the top of that would be Mongolia and etc., Russia and Siberia and stuff like that. And that's been pushing that stuff down. And Mongolia's been getting some seriously cold temperatures and some serious snow, as much as Japan as well. They've been breaking records all over the place. Madrid broke records for snow. We've been doing loads of snow here. And Argentina's been hit by quite a few floods. So it looks like that wet summer is actually coming through. So let's go into that sort of pole shift and see what's happening in that sort of respect. Is there any telltale signs of this pole shift that are coming, that we're in the process of? You know, the energy lines, certainly, if you go back into the playlist and see about the solstice, where we did dowsing on the ley lines, they have been very much more active. They've completely changed. The energy has completely changed. The change is here, and now it's a case of just going ahead and going and doing it. So we're going to be talking a little bit about our friends, the whales. Yeah, not the whales, the country, but whales, the animals. They're lovely things, and they're almost like the guardians of the sea, as much as I respect them. But we're going to be talking about something which is a little bit sort of painful, really, how they beach themselves and beaching numbers, basically, and how that ties into sun cycles, how that ties into the magnetic field of the Earth. So here is the figures of that, the beachings of these whales. The top one there, you've got 2019, 2020, and 2019 is in orange, so you see a greater number during their passage up by California, Oregon, and Washington State and Alaska. And then in the following year, in 2020, it drops slightly, but those 2 years have been very, very prolific. And you can see that compared with the black line, which is the 18-year average. So it's way above that. Now, we now know, and scientists have been collaborating this through NASA and etc., that whales beach themselves a lot more during solar flares and things like that. But there's a study which is going on at the moment, but where we have the solar cycle which is really low, you know, that means the magnetic field of the Earth drops. Therefore, their compasses, their inner compasses, which we all have, including you, including me, comes out. And maybe they're just sort of getting a bit blown off course by the changing magnetic field of the North Pole and South Pole. Yeah, in the thing below, we can see the same thing happened in 2000 and 1999 with very high levels of beaching. It's a shame that you don't put the average in the top one that goes back further than the 1999 and 2000. But there we had an inverse effect. So we had 1999 where there was less, and then in the year 2000 there was a lot more, which is opposite of what we're doing. Now that was 20 years ago. Now the sun does a pole shift every 11 or 22 years or 20 years, or roughly around that. So let's just have a look at the sunspot cycle. Let's see what happens. As we can see here, just at the beginning of solar cycle 23, that is when the sun is the lowest active, and that corresponds with those beachings in 1999 and year 2000. That's when it was really low. That's when it just started to pick up again. And also the shifting of the magnetic field of the Earth, or the depleting of the magnetic field of the Earth. The other one, which we saw above, which was 2019, 2020, in that dotted line and the solid line on the upper graph, that's also the moment where they actually beach themselves a lot more. So this is actually corresponding to solar cycles as well. And as I say, it inverts itself. So if you imagine in 2000, it was this way. In 2010, it was the other, and then we're back into this situation where we're like that. So it goes from negative to positive to negative. So we've had the last two negative cycles. We've had a lot more beachings of whales. So that could be the canary in the coal mine situation going on. There is other things that we can look at in the world around us. Now, I go into my ley lines or my energy lines and my chakra systems, which you can see there. On the left hand side, you can see a video showing the depletion, which comes from Suspicious Observers and Ben Davidson. Go and subscribe to his channel, it's absolutely brilliant. And since the last 170 years, the depletion of the Earth has been dropping through the floor. As we can see below, and one of the things that's interesting, as the vibrations start to come together, as they're inverting, we get that electricity flow that starts happening. And then the Earth, surface of the Earth, becomes a lot more electrified. And as it becomes a lot more electrified, what we get, and we can see these below, is actually lightning going from the Earth up to the sky. So it's going in reverse. And this is a real big sign of pole shift. So, yeah, now these sort of things that are really getting important, you should really take notice of what's going on around us. Now, does that relate to us as humans, collective and individually? I'm going to be talking to Tanya Lawton in a minute, genuine, intuitive person who does sort of hypnotherapy and stuff like that. And we're going to be going into sort of how it has been affecting the human race. Is it affecting our moral compass and our energy flow? So without further ado, I'd just like to welcome Tanya onto the scene. So hi Tanya, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you? Nice to see you sitting there on the Earth once again in your rightful position.
I am floating around in the outer sort of magnetic field of the Earth. Yeah, it's fantastic, loving it.
Excellent. And I'm down on the beach, by the channel, by the English Channel.
You lucky thing.
Not actually there. Anyway, how are you doing today? All right?
Very well, very well. Yeah, it's been a week. We speak on a regular basis, and we talk about lots of things that are going on. Lots of things we've sort of noticed. We both noticed it was a question of, on Monday was a bit of a black day Monday, wasn't it? We were on nothing day.
Yes, I looked straight at the KP index and wondered what was going on with the field, because it was a bit out of the blue.
It was out of the blue. Yeah, it was sort of everything grind to a halt, as it were.
Yes.
But that was just before that sort of coronal hole stream came through. It sort of picked things up a bit more and shake us up a bit and stuff like that. But I've been going through the idea of pole shift. Looking at whales and stuff like that, and as the canary in the ocean, as it were.
Yes.
But also about those sort of the electrical currents on the surface of the Earth, creating those upward stream sort of lightning that we're getting more and more now around the world, and this will come on more and more. I think the increased amount of lightning as we go into more, if we go further down the road of pole shift.
But these are standout symptoms. These are what we expect to see more of as we move forward.
Yeah, they're just one of them. You know, it's not like, you know, disaster movie, all of a sudden things just start unhinging and going. It's been unhinging for a long time, and, you know, there is a point, a pivoting point, in the physical pole shift. And there was that earthquake, you know, that you noticed it as well, because you gave me the heads up on it on Mongolia.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
That was a very unusual spot. I've never seen one in Mongolia before, so that was unexpected.
It was the second biggest earthquake in history in that area, and it was a 6.7.
Wow.
And it was on that lake in Mongolia, and they had you know, they had a lot of aftershocks as well that came through and stuff like that. You know, and that could be that energy coming to the surface and bubbling up in places that are off the grid, really, that are off the
Croatia a couple of weeks ago as well. Croatia had a large cluster, didn't they? And that's not normal spot either. So within 2 weeks, we've had two unusual surfacing.
Yeah, and we did get them in Africa as well, you know, in the central part of Africa, which is definitely not unheard of, but, you know, it certainly, you know, triggers triggers things and kind of makes it look a little bit closer at things that are sort of happening.
But it's when you see it filtering into the animal world, you know, you talked about the whales, you know, you have to think about birds and their migration routes. You know, are they going wrong? Are they going to the wrong? Are they getting to where they're planning on going? You know, so many of our animals, bees, use some kind of, you know, the magnetic system that we can't see them doing that, but they clearly, when it goes wrong, we do observe it. So it's coming to our attention, these things that are happening more and more.
And we should never forget that we're actual animals ourselves. So we must have this internal compass as well, this magnetic field of, you know, sensitivity, I think. There's no doubt about it. But as it is with humans, you know, we tend to look at society rather than what humans are actually doing. And, you know, that's why I wanted to bring you in as well on today's news, is sort of to talk about that, to talk about, you know, any sort of changes that are systematic to pole shift within the social structure of the human being. You know, could it be, you know, in the structure of families, in the structure of sexes, in the structure of how we do things and stuff like that. You know,
you said about the moral compass. I would question, you know, to me the word moral means good or bad. So are we talking really about, you know, this is an effect that we're not consciously aware of? Therefore, is it more how society is expressing itself, not consciously making a judgment, but how we are just evolving and observing changes in how we are expressing ourselves? Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah, moral was probably not the right choice of words, but it's certainly, you know, how society conducts itself. That's, you know, the compass of the conduction of human society, you know, which is definitely
pointing in a different direction. You know, there's obviously changes that we are observing, especially at this time, because, you know, we're on a relatively level playing field as far as the virus that we're dealing with at this time. So, you know, you can kind of look at society in a different way, because we have been leveled more from this. Changes that have been made, you know, over the last sort of 20, 30 years. The pole shift, as you say, it's not an overnight thing. It's something that's been,
you know, if we took the family, for example, sort of like, you know, the marriage and the relationship of between male and female, or even just the sexes itself. But, you know, I was thinking, you know, 50 years ago, 50, 60 years ago, when we're looking back to the 1950s and 60s, and, you know, I remember a phrase when I was a kid that children should be seen, not heard, sort of situation. And now it's completely different. It's completely turned on its head. You know,
children are the ones that are driving. You know, we listen, we nurture, we put them before everything else. That they are our main focus, I think, now. be safe
Is
to
that
say.
a good thing or a bad thing? That's not what we're deciding here. We're just doing observations, you know what I mean? But that is, yeah.
But the nuclear family, the dynamic of family has changed, since I was at school, where divorce maybe one in the class. That might be something and wasn't really spoken about. Now it's normal. It's just the way that
That could be social. That could be social, social changes as well. But once you start looking at all the things that are happening, even with, that whole idea of pronouns, of how we pronounce whether it's a female or male and stuff like that.
Or they.
Yeah, and they and stuff like that. Um, it's turned on its head to what it was sort of 40 years ago. Some people may say that's progression, that's a good idea. Some people might say that's a really bad idea. I'm not with it. As I say, we're not here to sort of judge, but we're just sort of making observations of how the standards are being inverted and being put on top of their heads.
Can you sort of explain briefly, energetically, how the gender shift is?
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, so if we look at the structure of the human chakra system, it gradually unfolds pretty much when you're born straight away. But what doesn't really unfold when on babies, certainly on children, is the sacrum. It's more down to desires of the heart and desires of the solar plexus. So I want that as a kid. I'm going to just take that off that other kid. That toy, I'm going to take it off, or I want that because it makes me feel good and everything like that, which is all really good. And that's all learning the structures of being in a society. Society changes, those structures are definitely changing. But it's they work in tandem. The chakras, like the solar plexus and the heart, work in tandem. They're not actually connected, but they feed off each other. By like two, like the cosmic rays and the sun rays. When we've got a low cycle in the sun, there's a huge cycle in cosmic rays. When there's when the sun picks up, there's low cosmic rays. It's a give and take sort of thing, a bit like the tide behind you. But with children, until they get to the stage where their testicles are producing spermatoids, semens and stuff like that, and girls are going through the menstrual cycle, it reduces a certain thought capacity. So it's pretty much impossible for a child before that age to have a sexual desire, because that chakra hasn't really been activated. It is there, but it hasn't been activated in the same way. It needs that estrogen and that testosterone levels to come up. And it sort of unfolds from the middle and gradually goes up. And once it hits to the crown and the root, and then it all goes back into the sort of center. And it does, where everything sort of lights up at the same time. But before, let's go back sort of like 40, 50 years, the majority of people were thinking about, where's my next pay packet coming from? What am I going to eat next week? How am I going to provide shoes for the kids and everything like that? Living life. And since we've gone on, that energy shift is moving it away from, say, like the solar plexus and the sacrum, and is moving more into the mental, more into the third eye, more into the crown, really, more than anything else. And society, even 30 years ago, and you could blame this on social media and stuff like this, but it is, the central use of our own energies. I've noticed it in my healing on a daily basis for years. The excess amount of energy that's up around this section here over the last sort of 10, 15 years, which I've been doing healing.
So how does that affect with the gender? How does that kind of mix the gender or make gender more fluid, so to speak?
Yeah, well, if you take away the energies from the lowest chakras, because that's what actually happens, we've got 100% energy. You do not you're not missing energy. When people say, oh, I've got a lack of energy, it's not a case of that. It's usually, well, it is every single time. I haven't found anybody who's missing energy, but it's the way we redistribute that energy. And that's what changes. So
that's creating this gender fluidity.
yeah. So basically, if you're using your sacrum and your solar plexus a lot more as a male, it would be very defined, the male persona, as much as the female persona would be very, very well defined. And that's all, that's all got, certainly over the last 5 years, has got really shaken up, and it's now a perception I give of what sex I am. So, we talk about people nowadays having a choice of what sex they are. Physically, it's not the case of that, but mentally, what they feel they associate with more than anything else.
So the fact that it is becoming more mental, maybe the fact, we are communicating through social media, it's far less physical. Our interaction with other humans, and especially through this pandemic, our interaction physically with people is becoming minimal. So our only kind of, interaction is on a mental level. So this is going to have exacerbated that even more. Plus moving into the age of Aquarius, where we are moving more into a mental, our children are spending all their time on screens. They're stimulated on screens from school, from social media. As far as the body's concerned, this is going to surely become even, further devolution away from the physical solar plexus and more up into the crown.
Yeah, because before it was much more on the root, being grounded, whereas in the 60s and 70s, that's gates started opening that people could actually almost, dare to dream, as it were. And, is it society, natural progression of society, or is it energy influencing upon us? I personally believe it's the influence of energy that is guiding society in that direction.
So this is what energy wants for us how to evolve, because as far as our physical bodies and the health of our physical bodies, surely it's not so good for us physically to be spending all of our time in our heads.
No, I don't necessarily think I don't think that's necessary, because energy doesn't actually have a desire or a plan. It doesn't have an agenda. That's the best thing about energy. But what it is doing is, as if it is pushing it up to that stage there, maybe we do need to go through that whole aspect of, of technology, of advancing in technology. Maybe that's more what energy is trying to push through, rather than this whole social engineered sort of structure of how we should be. Kids are great. I've got kids that are coming in at the moment, and kids are great. It makes you feel young all the time. You've got to love them. And I wouldn't try and restrict them in any way, even if I am making a video. But especially when they're laughing like that. But and that should be encouraged. And maybe it's the free thinking that should be encouraged more than anything else. You can be what you like. I don't give a monkeys. You know what I mean? If you associate yourself with being a rhinoceros, then fine, fair enough. I don't care.
But again, I think it's important, especially at this time, that we do stand up in ourselves, in our own truths, not to just be, shoehorned being in a certain way. We have to be able to be ourselves and speak our own truths and live our own truths. Especially at times like this, when things are being more controlled and our freedoms are being curtailed. We still have the right to feel and to be how we want to be.
Yeah, it's like it's like a pendulum. We go from one extreme to the other, and we're certainly going to the lengths of one extreme at the moment. And I think that extreme will sort of start swinging back the other way at some point, and hopefully, we will be able to, appreciate that time when we're in balance. But as the earth does shift, and it is definitely shifting all over the place, and you can see this physically all over the place, You know, you can see it with those polar vortexes as well, which I was talking about. You know, it's going to put pressure on, because we are 100% dependent upon this energy. You know, if there's no magnetic field of the earth, there is no life whatsoever. You know, forget about oxygen and stuff like that. If there's no magnetic field, the atmosphere will just go wandering off. It's just the way it goes.
How does that reflect with, just for my understanding, the pole shift and the magnetic field? We're talking about different things, because the pole shift is moving the poles, but what effect does that have on the strength? Because I seem to recall that you said when the polar shift actually is complete, the magnetic field fully restores back to where it was.
So if you imagine, it's like you got a sphere that goes tight and then inverts in itself. And the moment it inverts itself, that's when the poles drift off and move like that. And then the moment it inverts itself and pulls it through, as it reduces its energy, well, it doesn't actually reduce, it just tightens it into the center of the earth and then flicks through. And as it flicks through, it just literally goes and pops back out. And as it does pop back out, it just, you know, everything's sort of restored, as it were, in a sort of way. But during that period there, the surface of the earth, we will be exposed to cosmic rays. We will be exposed to huge temperature differences. So you could wake up one morning and it could be 60 degrees outside, and the next day you wake up, it's like minus 20.
Whoa.
So, you know, but this is not today. It's not tomorrow. Let's be, you know, this could be in 500 years' time. So
there is no timing on this.
No, but yeah, I think, you know, better be prepared, really, more than anything else, really, wouldn't you? You know what I mean?
Can you be prepared for 60 degrees and minus 20 degrees? We're not set up in that structure now to we have to have some time. Did the symptoms and signs get more extreme? Are we going to get more extreme weather over the next 5 to 10 years? Is it going to pave the way to show us the progression?
I think so. And it will be put down to global warming, but I think that over the next year, even year and a half, a lot of science is coming out now that's sort of kind of saying it's got more to do with sun than solar activity than to do with human activity. You know, human activity.
The whales, they are making those connections now, and saying it's not because of the temperature of the water and light coming in. I saw on Suspicious Observers, it's the level of light that's affecting the food chain for the whales, and everything. There's a chain reaction through the whole ecosystem, really. So
yeah, exactly. You know, it's all happening. If I think that if you're on board and you know what you're doing and you're living life properly and you're living it sort of as consciously, and I don't mean sort of consciously within love and stuff like that, but conscious of what's going on around you in the greater world, and realizing that we're on a planet that's spinning around the sun and shit can happen. You know what I mean? You know, that
whole feeling of you know, humans tend to feel invulnerable, but actually we are just a tiny speck on this planet in a very big galaxy, in a very big universe.
I'll just make sure at least you've got a chimney.
Huh?
So if you've got 60 degrees outside, you don't light the fire. If you've got minus 30 degrees, you want to light the fire. You know, but that's just temperature. You know, that's not talking about, you know, electric magnetic field and.
Well, I hope we can talk. You know, we are planning on doing another video where we can go into more detail.
Well, we're gradually putting it together, but it is turning out to be a bit of a beast, isn't it?
So, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information, and
there's a lot of information. We're getting there.
Accumulate a lot of the work that we've done over these last sort of 20-25 years to understanding it all, because this is, you know, it's not something you can just pick up a book out of the library and read about. You know, we are learning all the time what's happening, and you know, whether people have learned this in previous pole shifts or not, we are going through this now. We are learning now, and you've been instrumental in certainly educating me about it. And this is good information for people to have the heads up for.
Yeah, I've certainly been trying to put it through, through that. It's like Legos, you know what I mean? It's brick by brick, and if you don't start with the bricks at the bottom, it's going to be difficult to see the actual real bigger picture, as it were. But as I say, pole shift is going to be certainly on the agenda over the next sort of 3 or 4 years, whilst we've still got electricity and stuff like that, But it's interesting to look at society, and we do that. Obviously we talk on a daily basis about this sort of thing, and I think it's good to talk to, get in and talk to each other about it. Talk to your neighbour, freak him out, say to him, "What do you think about pole shift?" And so Mr. Jones would kind of go, "Pole shift? What do you want about?" But freak him out.
It is not a conspiracy theory. Pole shift is not a conspiracy theory. It is part of our functioning environment. We live on this planet. This planet is going through that. We can't escape it. We can't ignore it. It's going to happen.
Yeah, totally.
How we deal with it is down to us.
Yeah. So just keep an eye on what's going on in society. Now that we're moving into that new age of vibration.
Brilliant.
We've probably gone on far too long again, but anyway, that's been your midweek energy news. We hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe and stuff like that. I will say that if you are having problems dealing with society at the moment and with all these lockdowns and stuff like that, Tanya, you do sort of hypnotherapy sessions online, which they can
come to our rescue freely.
Yeah, so they can go on Cymatic Life and see it on there. I also do sort of energy sessions online as well. And sometimes everybody needs a bit of help to get through. And if you do need that help, drop us a line, as it were. In the meantime, thank you for being there again, Tanya. And I will see you soon.
Okay, see you soon. Ciao for now.
Ciao for now. Bye.
Don't believe, just know. Cymatic TV, turning vibration into reality.